This recipe is for garlic rolls, which you may wish to use as an accompaniment to something like a lasagna when you're presenting your food for an exam. So you don't need to make loads of bread. In my bowl I have 200 grams of strong plain flour. I need to add just half a teaspoon of salt, which seems like quite a lot of salt, but bread can take quite a lot of salt, and if you don't put it in, it won't taste very nice. And a sachet of Easy Blend yeast. What's important with your Easy Blend yeast is that you must not add that to the water. If you put that into the water first, it doesn't work properly. So I'm just going to mix that up, make a well in the middle, and in my measuring jug I've got 150 mils of warm water. And because your yeast is live, we want this water to just feel nice and warm to your finger. The easiest way to get it warm is to use 100 mils of cold water and then add 50 mils of boiling water. So I'm just going to pour most of that in and start with a knife and just mix this together. It is better to actually end up with a wet bread mix than one that is too dry. Now I've put most of that liquid in, but not all of it, and you can see that the bread looks like it is starting to join together. You can do this straight away with your hands if you prefer, but I prefer to use a knife to start with and then put my hands in. That's not quite wet enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more water and then mix that around again. If your dough is too dry, you cannot develop the gluten properly and your dough will not rise. So it's always better to have a bread dough which is a little bit too wet than one that is too dry. And as you work the bread dough and you knead it, it does dry up a little bit anyway. So this is now a little bit wet, but as I said, too wet is better than too dry, and I can work with this. So your bowl should be mainly clean, and you can get that out of your way and then start to knead your bread dough. Even though this is sticking to my hands and it's a little bit wet, I'm going to work it quickly because I know it will dry up, and if I keep it on the move, you can see I haven't got lots of bread dough stuck to the worktop. I just want to... Okay, after 5 to 10 minutes you should have a nice smooth bread dough, and ideally you would leave this to rise somewhere warm. I'm going to cover this over in cling film and I'm just going to give it a few minutes to rise. This first proving helps develop the bread. If you're doing this at school and you're doing this in your exam, you should have time to give it 2 risings while you get on with something else. If you're in a normal lesson and you're running a bit late, you might have to miss this first rising. Okay, the bread dough for the garlic rolls has risen. As you can see, it's doubled in size, and if you touch it gently, it springs back. You shouldn't be able to see finger marks in it. What you need to do now is knock this dough back. So we want all of the dough out of here, and it's lovely and soft and warm. So all of your dough out of your bowl, we can start to shape. So knocking back literally is just knocking all of the air out of the dough, and as you do this you should feel that the gluten is lovely and soft, the dough is nice and soft, but it's going to get a chance to rise again. So once you've got the dough knocked back, you need to cut this into pieces. If you're doing this for an exam, your bread dough doesn't actually want to be, the garlic rolls don't want to be too big. So I am tempted to do this into 8, but for the moment I'm just going to do 6. So 6 or 8 pieces, and if you cut all of the dough to start with, I'm just going to make round rolls, and the way to do it, just use 2 fingers to do your kneading. So same as you did before, knead the bread just with a couple of fingers, taking the mixture from the outside into the middle until it looks like around the outside you can see there are no rough pieces of bread. If you squeeze that together, turn it over and then just roll it round in your hands, you should end up with a small round roll. So knead with your fingers just to make sure that there is no cut surface on the underside of the roll. Squeeze it together, turn it over and shape it into a round. Your baking tray just needs to be floured. So flour your baking tray and put the rolls on. If you were to cook your bread like this, none of this would disappear. So you would see these cut marks in your bread. If I was to do this and put that roll this way up, all of these creases would be visible. Bread doesn't behave in the same way as a cake. It's a completely different mixture. It does not melt, the surface does not smooth over when it's in the oven. If you want it to be round when it comes out, it has to be round when it goes in. So just make your little rolls, all 6 or 8 onto the tray. I'm just going to put mine together into a circle, and then I'm going to leave these to rise again. They need a second rising before they go in the oven, or if you run out of time during the lesson, then you are just going to get one rising from them. But hopefully you had time to do a short proving earlier, and we can leave these to rise again. So I've spread them out a little bit because they should double in size, and I'm just going to leave those to one side until they have doubled in size. I don't want them to be drying out on the top, so I am just going to gently cover them with a bit of cling film. If your dough is a little bit wet, you can oil your cling film, but what you mustn't do is tuck the cling film under the baking tray. I really only want this to stop these drying out on the top. You can see the bread dough is not sticking to the cling film, but if I tuck the cling film underneath the tray, what will happen is it will prevent the rolls from rising up. So I'm going to leave those until they are doubled in size. Okay, my little bread rolls have risen. They're just starting to touch each other, but if I touch the top of them, they are springing back. If you wish to, you can glaze these, but I'm not glazing these because I want them to be garlic rolls, so I want to use the garlic butter a bit later on to cook those. So I'm just going to pop those in the oven, very hot oven, 210 degrees Celsius, gas mark 7, for 10 minutes. Right, for the butter, the garlic butter for the garlic rolls, you need 25 grams of butter and 2 cloves of garlic. So you need to crush and chop your garlic. So just peel it first of all, and then crush and chop your garlic, and all you need to do is mash it into the butter on a plate. And you can do this while your rolls are cooking, because it won't take very long to just chop your garlic up and get it mashed into that butter. So I've just roughly chopped that to start with, and that is going to go into the butter. Your garlic rolls your bread rolls should only take 10 minutes to cook, and the best way to tell if they're cooked, apart from the fact that we want them to be a nice brown colour, is to tap them on the bottom and see if they sound hollow. And I'm just going to put this, there we go, on top of a damp tea towel for a minute to stop this moving around while I just mash this garlic in. So making garlic butter is really easy. So there we go, I have my garlic butter. And my bread rolls should be ready to come out by now. So I've got round brown bread rolls, and if I just move one off the tray, turn it upside down, tap, and if it sounds hollow, then they are cooked. What I'm going to do with the garlic butter is just going to rearrange these a little, put one in the middle, and then I'm just going to put the garlic butter on top of the bread so that it melts into these bread rolls. So I just want to melt some of this garlic butter over all the bread rolls. While they're hot, so just melt a little bit of that onto the bread. Doesn't matter if some of it falls down underneath. But half the fun of garlic bread is the butter being melted into the bread, so it's giving them a nice shine. And the garlic is there as well. So some of this has fallen down into the bread rolls, in between the bread rolls, but I'm just going to keep going with the garlic butter for a little while until I've used it up. Just needs to sit on top, and when I've managed to get all of the garlic butter over the garlic rolls, I'm just going to pop it back into the oven just for a couple of minutes, just so that any largish lumps of garlic that are on the outside are cooked through. So the rolls have come out of the oven, they're finished cooking, and the garlic on the top has just browned a little bit. So we have butter that's run all the way around the outside of the rolls and a little bit of garlic on the top. So when you break these open, you should have a good garlicky taste.